We've been asked to do a presentation, and one of the first things we do is rush to open PowerPoint. Welcome to this short video. My name is Darren Toms. I'm your virtual presentation coach. The topic today is why we should not rush to open PowerPoint when we are first writing our presentation. We're going to be focusing on 3 things that we need to be doing before we open PowerPoint. So we're going to be looking at, number 1, who is in the audience? Number 2, what is the purpose or call to action of your presentation? And then finally, how are we going to structure that presentation? So let's start with the audience. The first thing we want to be considering is who is in the audience. Yes, we've got our topic, but we want to be thinking about the audience experience. If we don't consider the audience, it's a little bit like writing a love letter and addressing the love letter to whomever it may concern. We would often want to personalize it. So some questions that we might want to ask our audience include, who is going to be there? Why should they care about your message? What is the impact of your message? Are you delivering good news? Are you delivering bad news? What is the level of knowledge of the audience and how much detail should you be going into? What time of day will we present? And what questions or objections could our audience have? Understanding our audience's perspective, the mindset, the attitude, the level of knowledge will help set you up for success. Considering what questions the audience will have also allows us to see if we can answer those questions in the presentation. So once we've done the audience analysis, we also want to be thinking of that second point. What is it we want the audience to do? This is what we call our call to action, our purpose. In other words, we want to be thinking, what do we want the audience to be thinking, feeling, saying, or doing, having listened to us? If I was doing a presentation on the City of London, I might say, for example, that if you've never been to the City of London, you should book a ticket and go and visit, and here's some examples of why. But I could take a different polar view. If you've never been to the City of London, don't bother. There are plenty of other cities that I'd recommend that you go to first. So although the subject matter is the same, the purpose, the call to action is different. So if we're doing a team meeting, what is it you want your team members to focus on? If we're delivering a presentation on a project, what actions or what focus do you want those project members to focus on for the days, weeks, and months ahead? By focusing on that call to action, it will help your audience understand what is it that you want them to be doing. Once we've got clarity of our call to action, remember we haven't opened PowerPoint yet, we then need to think about how to structure our information. Structuring information is going to be critical. We have a finite amount of time. It could be a 5-minute presentation, a 30-minute presentation, even a 2-hour presentation. But very often we don't have enough time to cover everything. So we want to be thinking, what do we include, but also what are we going to purposefully choose to leave out? Think of this as an example. You go to a restaurant and you ask the waiter for a menu. Very often on that menu, it will be split into 3 key parts: the starters, the mains, and the desserts. So guess what? It has a structure. It is easier for a diner to choose what they want because of that structure. But if all of the, like the starters, the mains and desserts were all mixed together on different pages, it would make it so much harder for anybody to understand what options are available. So structuring is very often gathered around the power of 3. It will have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You'll see this structure, for example, in television news programs. Very often it will have the headlines, the main stories, and then the summary. That power of 3 makes it memorable because it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. One example of the power of three could be if you want to get better at presenting, I recommend you do three things. Practice, practice, practice. Now, of course, I've said that 3 times. But if I said to you, I want you to practice, 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 you might not really remember that because I've said it too many times, probably don't even know how many times. So the power of three allows us to structure our presentation and think about what data, what stories, what evidence we want to put into that information and into that presentation, and which do we exclude because we simply cannot always include everything. And once we've done that, now we can start thinking about finally opening PowerPoint. Once we've opened that PowerPoint, we can start populating the slides based on that storyboard. Remember, if you're going to film a movie, you will storyboard that movie out before you start shooting any scenes. You would also, if you're building the world's tallest building, you're going to plan it out before you start construction. PowerPoint is exactly the same. We want to plan it before we open PowerPoint. But when we're using PowerPoint, the golden rule is less is more. Don't throw every bit of information on every slide. Think about how you're going to make the information on the slides easy for you to tell stories and data around, but make sure it is clear what that means for the audience as well. So are you going to just throw lots of data, or are you going to link it back to what the audience and what that call to action is? And of course, if you're opening PowerPoint and you haven't thought about your audience call to action, it's going to be harder for you to put that PowerPoint together in a way that works for the audience. So the summary of what we've been talking about. Yes, PowerPoint is a great tool, but so is a hammer. But if you're fixing a window, the hammer is not the right tool to use. So before we open PowerPoint, I recommend that you focus on the audience. Make sure you understand their mental state, where they are emotionally, what knowledge they have, what challenges they face, and how they might receive your message. Think about your purpose. What is it you want your audience to do, having listened to you? And then finally, how are you going to structure that message in a way that is relevant and easy for the audience to follow? Because without that structure, people get lost. So I hope this video was useful to you. If it was, please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, because I've got loads more content to help you become even better when you are presenting. Thanks for listening.